Ladies and gentlemen, the goal in your life is not to figure out how to be comfortable in your mental prisons, but to realize that you have the keys to set yourself free. Hey everybody, welcome to How to Be Mesmerizing. It's Tim Shurr, and today we have a very exciting guest. This guy is all about what's coming, finding the trends and being on the cutting edge of business and marketing and understanding what drives us at an unconscious level. Graeme Newell, welcome to the program.
Oh, Tim, it's so great to be here. I'm going to be climbing inside of your brain today and showing you some of the weird, freaky madness that's going on inside there that you probably didn't even know is going on. So I'm going to give you some very specific things that you're going to be able to take back to make better decisions, not to get hoodwinked by your own subconscious brain.
And that's why you're so mesmerizing, and that's why you're on this program, Graeme. So when I first met you, I was dazzled by your presentations and how you were, we both love behavioral science. We both love understanding cognitive bias and what causes us to make poor decisions when we're smart people, right? And why we go one way when we should go the other way. And we know we should go the other way and we don't, and what drives that. And you are an expert in behavioral finance. So you really focused on the cognitive forces that drive our money-making decisions, which everybody needs to be aware of that.
Yeah, we're all making those money decisions, whether it's paychecks, or checking accounts or big investment stuff. So all of us can make smarter money decisions. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So what caused you to go? Now, I know you have a pretty impressive background when it comes to producing, and you decided to go into the area of behavioral finance. What drew you to that?
Well, I got to tell you, I've spent years and years and years in the advertising business. And what I did was I used to take people, I would throw them inside of an MRI, and then we would show them ads. And what I would see back, we'd hear back from them, yeah, I really enjoyed that ad and I thought it was fantastic. But then we'd look at their brain and we could see that, wow, they were distracted. They were looking away. They didn't care about that at all. And what we found is that what people said they liked, what people actually liked when we looked at their brain was very different. So this just got me fascinated by how we make decisions. And so what I ended up doing was getting into this in a very big way in trying to understand exactly what that disconnect was between what we say we like and what we actually see inside of our brain. So the way that we do this is I do things like we have things like EEG scanners. These are these things that look like a shower cap that they put over top of your head. And we put people inside of these little shower caps, and then we can measure their brain activity. We use things like galvanic skim response. You sweat a little bit when you feel some sort of emotion. And what's neat is we can actually measure that. We're going to do things like measure your heart rate and your breathing. So it's all of these different methodologies. And what I do is put people in these machines and then ask them to make tough financial decisions. And let me tell you, we start sweating, our heart rate starts going up, and we get really nervous. Anytime anybody mentions money at all, it freaks us out. And I was just stunned by that. So what we can do now is that we can look inside a person's brain and really understand exactly what's going on at a subconscious level as they make those kind of money decisions. We use things like eye tracking technology, and we can see exactly if we showed you an ad, if you actually looked at the screen and what you actually saw. So what was neat is for so many years, what I was able to do was to help companies, mostly financial services companies, to fine tune their design and all of their communication for financial services customers to really understand exactly what resonated. What was cool is before they used to kind of go, okay, I've got this ad and we're going to throw it on the air and I hope it works. But now what we could do is tell you before it actually went on the air, whether it worked on a subconscious level. So we do things like that. But one of the things that we also do is we throw eye tracking glasses on people and we send them inside of retail stores and we can track their eye movements. Where did they look on the shelf? Where exactly did they did they look and what did they grab? And then what did they buy? We can do things like facial coding. What these are is these are the little motions in your face. I don't know, but when you feel, a little bit worried, your brow will come down a little bit, or the, corner of your mouth will twitch up. Well, we can actually use cameras to measure that. And by measuring that, we can get a good idea of what those subconscious reactions are. So we'll use facial coding. We'll take people and we'll throw them inside of these scanners, and then we'll take the websites, show that to them, and kind of go, what did you like? And they tell us what they like, but also we can read their brain as well. So it's really a whole new way for us to find out exactly what people's preferences are.
It's so extraordinary. It sounds like science fiction, but it's not. It's science reality. And you have developed the equipment to be able to measure people's unconscious reactions and unconscious responses, which is powerful and also a little scary. Because when you understand people better than they understand themselves, where do the ethics come in with that?
It's really a fine line. And it's something we're all dealing with right now with companies like Amazon and Google and those folks that are able to push our buttons. I don't know if you have had a chance to see the documentary that's on Netflix right now called The Social Dilemma. Mm-hmm. They deal very specifically with this about how the algorithms know us better than we know ourselves. So no question, these tools can be used for good or for evil. But what's exciting is that there are so many incredibly good ways that we can use this as well. Take, for example, public health. People get messages to not smoke, to take their medication for diabetes and things like that. There are ways that we can use behavioral science in order to get people to do things that are great for them. So it's all about really helping people to understand exactly what motivates them, what actually makes us do behaviors, and then very specifically tweaking our messaging, tweaking what we're doing so that it really communicates on that subconscious level.
Wow. Graeme, you are fascinating. So help me understand, how does the decision-making process work? What has your research uncovered?
Well, Tim, you probably think you're a pretty rational guy and that, man, you get all the data that you're going to bring in. And all of us feel as though, we get those decisions. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make the most rational choice. Well, let me tell you, nothing could be further from the truth.
Agreed.
So what we know is from the research that we've seen is that about 85% of our decision-making process is completely subconscious. So think about that. That means that almost everything you're doing now and forever is subconscious. So there's really two parts to our brain. There's our instinctual brain, and that's the part of the brain that does things like chewing your food and going upstairs and all of the things that you just do automatically. Tim, have you had that experience where you've driven somewhere and you look up and you realize you had no idea that anything happened as you went through? The whole ride is gone because you were somewhere else. Well, your instinctual brain was pressing the pedals and making sure that everything went fine because you've learned how to do that automatically. So we've got that instinctual brain, but then what we've got is what I call the rational brain. Sometimes scientists call this system 2 brain. And what that does is those are the higher thinking brains that decide things like, should I go to college? And, should I meet this person? All those things that are deep inside our brain, those are the instinctual, but the things that we can, experience every day, those are the more rational ones. So what science tells us is the way that we make decisions is like this. We feel something in our instinctual brain. And then what happens is our rational brain confirms what we already believe. Now, we think that we're just these rational people and nothing phases us. But what we know is from the brain science, nothing could be further from the truth. We're just big balls of instinct walking around. And so any message that gets in, and, like in your social feed, as you go through that feed and you're looking at your device, we think that, well, I can just rationally choose what I'm going to believe and what I don't. It's not how it works. Anything that's on that feed gets in. And it's going to activate those fear centers in your brain. You've probably had that experience of sitting in a movie where you can completely suspend reality and you look up and you're having that emotional love moment with the heroine. That is autonomically done. Your subconscious brain does not know that that's not real. That's why your heart rate goes up. That's why you feel things like you do. So we can kid ourselves into believing that we're making truly rational decisions, but we've got to make sure that we understand it happens on a subconscious level first. and we're going to get tricked into believing it was completely rational. Have you had those friends where they tell you the reason they do something, and you look at them and you kind of go, that is totally not the reason you do that, but they're just oblivious to it themselves?
Yes, absolutely. That's why I spend my whole career helping people identify those subconscious beliefs that they have, because your brain in many ways is a computer that runs programs, and your beliefs are the software programs, and your mind is running those software programs without your conscious intent or awareness. So it's been proven in research studies that your unconscious mind is making decisions on your behalf, sometimes a full 7 seconds before you're even consciously aware. And now your research is backing it up, which is why It's so important to be more mindful and pay attention to what your beliefs are, and how what's happened to you in your childhood, which is where most of our beliefs were formed, is dictating the decisions that you're making in your love life, with your marriage, with your money, with how you take care of your health, right? All of that is being dictated not based on what's happening in the moment, but based on how you've been pre-programmed.
And what was your freakiest moment that you had when you had somebody that was completely operating on an instinctual level, and then they thought they were completely being rational? Did you have a moment like that?
Oh, well, yeah, a lot of people come to me and they're like, I don't understand. I'm a smart person. I have accomplished all these goals. I'm very, motivated, but this one area of my life, I feel like I am blocked. And they act like they're a completely different person. Like they're powerless and weak and can't get motivated. They're not focused. And it's really just simply because they have a different belief and a different operating system when it comes to helping others or attaining a goal versus how we take care of ourselves. And that is the big discrepancy that most people have. We've been trained into us, take care of others. And if you take care of yourself, sometimes that means you're just being selfish. And it's further from the truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me ask you this: so what are some of the big mistakes? Because you've taken this into the world of finance. I mean, off camera, when we've talked in the past, I said that you're like the madman, like that TV show Mad Men, that all about the advertising guys, because they were brilliant at understanding how to cause people to behave in the way that they wanted them to. But you've taken all that, a couple of decades of experience, and you have pointed in a direction that empowers people. And so what are some of the financial decisions that people make? Some of the bad ones, when people they win millions of dollars in a lottery and 5 years later they're broke again. What's going on in their mind that would cause them to do that?
Well, I think it's important that, first of all, we kind of understand exactly where our financial decisions come from. So where most of our decisions happen and where our brains were fine-tuned in order to make decisions wasn't in modern day life. They were trained during those 2 million years of evolution back on the African savanna. Now, back then, it was really all about optimizing your brain to make decisions that were about survival. Things like not freezing to death and not starving to death. And maybe, if you're lucky, finding a good-looking cave lady so you could pass along your DNA to the next generation. So fancy skills like agriculture and living in houses, that's just the last 10,000 years. So we like to think that we're modern. We've got these great devices and we dress well, but nothing could be further from the truth. We are working with badly outdated hardware every single day. And what our decisions happen, the decisions that we make, the reason that they're oftentimes so terrible in financial terms is because, it just never came up around the caveman campfire what this quarterly statement is going to be saying. What it was about is those basic survival things. So you take something like a spider and show it to anybody, they're going to react. Why? Well, spiders were what killed people back years and years ago. Yet we're still afraid of snakes and spiders and things like that. Why are so many people afraid of flying? It's kind of weird because we know rationally it's very safe. It's the best way to do it. Well, our caveman ancestors were very afraid of closed spaces. Why? Because closed spaces were the cave you could get cornered in. They were also very afraid, a lot of people are afraid of open spaces. What's that about? Well, that's where that cheetah ran you down and ate you in the African savanna when you were running on a big open space and you'd be most vulnerable to it. Things like, being under the covers and cuddling always feels really good to us. Why is that? Well, that's because our caveman ancestors realized that hiding was a great way not to get eaten. And we are still operating on that level. So our financial decisions are very much driven by those instinctual rationales that we had back in caveman times. And so what that's about is oftentimes fear. So we invest in the market. We put our money in, and lo and behold, what happens? Things don't go as well. So you got to think like a caveman. So what would that caveman be doing? Well, he's frightened. And what do we do when we're frightened? We either fight or flight is what we do. We run away, in which case we go, oh my goodness, my stocks went down. I've got to sell them all and get rid of them. The very worst time to buy. Or we have a great experience where we make some money. And what do? We want more is what we want. So what are we going to be doing? At the top of the market, we're going to buy again because we go, oh, this is fantastic. Because back in caveman times, when you got a great, deer that you had, you gorged yourself. You got even more is what you got. And so we're still doing that. We get a hit of that dopamine and we want more of that high. And so we'll buy at the top of the market and sell at the bottom of the market. And that's what kills us.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people who are savvy who wait for that to happen, and then that's how they keep becoming wealthier, because they've learned how to take a step back from the emotions. People are always talking about how you have to separate your emotions, from your logic when you're investing in the stock market. And it's easier said than done. And so, and especially for the average investor or the middle class, or upper class investor, because they don't typically have millions of dollars if something goes wrong to fall back on. And so we feel this pressure and this consuming stress. And so what has your research showed you about our decision-making process when we are stressed?
Well, right now, my goodness, are we making decisions that are stressed all the time right now? What we've got to really realize is that we're just all a little bit freaked out right now, and we're all going to be brain damaged for a while. We have those constant messages that are coming on now for us about COVID and about the election and all the different things that have been going on over the course of the last little while. We get that device and we get freaked out. And what happens is we instantly go into that fear mode. So, Tim, it's very much about controlling who gets access to your subconscious brain. And this is why it's so critically important for us, whether we're making money decisions or any kind of decisions in our life, that we carefully hone what we let into our subconscious brain. Usually that's on your device. So are you just going to CNN and taking a look at everything that's going to be there, or MSNBC or Fox News? They make money by freaking you out. And that's their goal. They want to get your attention. Nothing gets your attention better than fear. And that's going to just continually trigger your instinctual brain over and over again. And what's going to happen? You're going to make bad financial decisions and bad decisions all the time. So relentlessly pull people out of your feed. Anybody that uses the term breaking news, get rid of them, because what they're trying to do is to activate your fear centers. And that's what that breaking news banner is all about.
That proves your point about being instinctual in so many ways, because they say breaking news for everything now. It used to be if there actually was breaking news. Now they say it after every single commercial break, after every single segment. They might talk about something for 30 seconds and they go on to other breaking news. And they say breaking news about 40 times during a 20-minute broadcast. Yeah. And yet it still works. And so it still grabs people's attention. Like, oh, I better pay attention to this.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you had that one where they go, yeah, we've got breaking news on what happened in history 10 years ago today?
Exactly right. Yeah. So I'm curious from an advertising point of view, when you started having people and they were wearing the glasses with the cameras in them and you could see where their eyes were going and what they were looking at, what are some of the trends you might have noticed? What causes people to buy?
We found out such incredible things, particularly in some of the eye tracking studies that we did going into stores. One of the things that we found is that if you want to put a sign up, the best place to put a sign is on the floor, because we could see nobody was looking up. What we can do
when
now,
they first walk into a store?
Anytime. What it's
Really?
all about is, we have a tendency not to look up when we walk, when we do whatever. We tend to look down. And so that's a whole trend started of putting, have you seen those signs on the floor?
Yeah.
In the grocery store, those really end up working. But what we found is that as we did these eye tracking studies, that people would look at things that we never dreamed were even there. Now what we can do is we don't even need real people anymore. So we can take people, say, send 200 people into a store with eye tracking glasses on. Then we can use AI and machine learning to realize what exactly they looked at. Then we can take the people out of the study. We can use machine learning and we can pretty much duplicate what a real person would look at. And these are the tools that are going to keep getting better and better and better. AI and machine learning are going to revolutionize the world. And particularly in the world of behavioral science, it's going to be more important than ever that all of us have clear control of what those privacy settings are for us, because these people can operate under the radar and you want to make sure that you know who's getting access to your subconscious.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they're going to be showing you what you want. Hey, do you want a custom, set of ads for you? So, and what that means is they're going to show you the products that they think you're going to want the most, but that limits you to what else is out there, right? And what else you might be, want access to.
Yeah. Tim, I was amazed at what people tell us and what we actually saw in all of this content.
Yeah.
So, for example, I did some testing on an ad for a large electronic equipment manufacturer. And it was designed, our demographic was 30-year-old women. Mm-hmm. And so we presented this ad and had shots of various people. Well, one of the things that we found is that there was a large African-American man in the middle of the ad. Mm-hmm. And no one would ever say that worried me. But what we found is that with these women, it was in their brain and it actually worried them, And these kind of inappropriate things, I can't tell you, when a good-looking woman comes on the screen, what we see in the eye tracking glasses are just crazy. They really are. So this is us on a deeply instinctual, primitive level, where what rules is sex and food and danger and violence and things like that. So we see people at their worst is what we see, because this is the real us. Now, usually our conscious brain is available to kind of tamp that down and not do things. But if we were honest with ourselves, we'd be walking through the cafeteria and we would be grabbing food off of people's plates, we would be doing things that were incredibly socially inappropriate. And those impulses come up all the time. It's just we've got a conscious brain that can stop them. But it doesn't mean we don't feel those things. So this comes back to all the financial decisions and all the decisions you're making. You've got to continually think like a caveman, because that's who you are. And nothing has changed. We simply had not had time to move that forward. So you're going to rationalize some of these behaviors that you have as, well, it was the smart choice. But what it was the fearful or instinctual choice. And those are the things that tend to get us in trouble.
So it's almost like we have this animal side of us, and then we have the more spiritual side of us. And the animal side is full of instincts and ego and greed and fear. And then we develop these frontal lobes, these prefrontal lobes that are designed to help us to suppress behaviors that are not good for the community, good for yourself, good for others. And through the spiritual development, through what we call emotional intelligence, you learn to coexist and collaborate to make a world a better place for everybody. And that's the balance and the struggle that I feel like people are constantly having in themselves and with each other. And if you are not mindful, and that just means self-aware that this is happening inside of you, which most people are not. Most people have no idea that this battle is happening inside of them. They're very mindless, right? They're just not aware that they have influence over themselves. So one of the challenges when it comes to unconscious biases, like what you were talking about with having an African-American man in a photo, and all of a sudden certain women feeling threatened, white women probably feeling threatened, because these stereotypes have been drilled into people's heads for so long, into white people's heads for so many years. We understand those biases, right? We understand our stereotypes. We understand that when we are connecting with people who are different than us, we tend to pull back a little bit simply because people are comfortable with people who are like them. And when you're with someone who is different from you, if you weren't raised in that kind of way, then it causes your fight or flight response to kick up, even if you don't want it to happen. Even if you, consciously oppose it and say, hey, this is horrible. Why am I having this thought? This is terrible. I would never support this. So that's the one end. But the other side of it is the part that you and I have really dived into, and it's the unconscious biases. It's the biases and misconceptions and beliefs that are inside of you that you don't know are there. So tell me a little bit about your experience with that.
Sure. So, what you're talking about there with those unconscious biases that we have when, if we weren't raised in the right way. Well, even if you were raised in the right way, you're pretty much going to feel them anyway. It's going to be less of a trigger for you. So the way that I like to, the analogy that I always like to use, it's the brain scientists talk about, it's sort of like a man riding an elephant. Mm-hmm. And the man is the conscious brain. And the man is on top of this elephant, and the elephant is the subconscious brain. Now, the man can kind of suggest which way the elephant should go, but make no bones about it, the elephant is firmly in charge. And this is the way you got to think about your conscious brain as well.
That's brilliant. I love that metaphor. That is brilliant. So, do you have a particular story that comes to mind for, someone you've worked with where they were, made some really poor financial decisions, even though they might be an intelligent human being?
You bet. So let me tell you a little bit about one client that we were working with. Had a buddy. He wanted to make sure that he was at the top of his game, was trying to be a great speaker. And he was going out there. And so he said, well, what can I do? How can I make this great? How can I really get those best skills? So he started going out and he would follow Tony Robbins and, all of the great speakers. And he just made an art of studying them, what they did, how they did it, the way that they sold. And lo and behold, he came back and he didn't do very well. So this takes me back to a story from actually World War II. So back in World War II, what was going on is the planes were just getting shot up over Germany all the time. So what they did was they got all the planes and they had a mathematician come back and say, well, let's graph where all the bullet holes are in the plane so we can tell exactly where should we put some armor plating. And so they put this graph up and they got this plane going, and lo and behold, there were lots of shots in the wings and in the tail and stuff. But one thing they noticed was that, hey, there aren't any bullet holes really in the engines. And it seems like that would be an important place where they would have that. Well, what they found was that the planes that got shot in the engine never made it back to base. They crashed in Germany. And this is what was going on with my friend. This is a cognitive bias called survivorship bias, in that we have a tendency to trust the advice of people who are winners because the people who are losers are no longer around to provide contradictory evidence. So what my buddy needed to do was to go out and interview some people that tried in the speaking business and washed out miserably because they had some great advice on what not to do. And this is one of the things that we see in the financial services community all the time. They have those mutual funds, all those things. They end up picking all the winners and you end up copying the tactics of the winners. When all the people that washed out, lost the money on the IPO, did terrible, you don't hear from them. And understanding that. So with all of us, it's important to have that balanced conversation. I want to hear from the winners for sure. But I also want to hear those great stories from the losers. And if we're going to find those people, we've got to actively bring them into our lives.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I like that. I had someone who ran a sports association, a nonprofit group, and they were called Sports World. And they would take retired NFL players and NBA players, and they would have them go and speak at high schools and empower kids and through sports. Right. And I remember him saying in life, there are not winners and losers. There are winners and learners. And as long as you're doing one or the other, you'll be okay. And so I think that that's so important that, I love that point that sometimes we model, other people who seem to be doing really well and are very successful. There's no way you could follow their path though. because it was unique and it was for them, and they had things unfold in their life, and they had issues that they went through, and they had struggles that they went through that's not going to go that way for you. And so, but you can study the clues that are left behind from those who have figured it out and those who stopped. Because I think that sometimes, if you keep going, you eventually figure it out, or you just stop. So those who gave up or went a different direction, there's so much value in learning from them. And I think that that's why we're in, over the last year or two, I've been noticing a shift in how people, especially in the internet marketing world, have been going from telling you how fabulous they are and how much money they have, and showing you all these fancy cars and planes that they don't actually own, to being more vulnerable and saying, hey, I tried and I failed, and I built this business up, and then it went out of business, and I launched sales funnels, and 6 of the 7 didn't work, but the 7th one hit about 10 years into it. And then, I made $1 million, and so what people think when they first get lured in is, I'm going to make this funnel, and in 6 months, I'm going to be a millionaire, instead of recognizing, well, no, it took 10 years to be able to build that up, all the trial and error and learning and stuff. So I love the idea that you want to study from those who've made it, and you want to also study from those who haven't, because you can learn just as much from that side of it.
And one of my favorite quotes is from Winston Churchill. He said, "Success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm."
That's right. Because eventually you run out of things to fail on, and then success is what's left. And so,
you don't fail until you stop.
Yeah.
And if you just don't stop, you never fail.
Yeah. That's why I always say there is no failure. There's just feedback. Just get the feedback and then make your next move.
Thomas Edison, I know 10,000 ways that things don't work.
That's right. But that 10,000th one created that light bulb, right? And so we, that's how we want to model that. We're not modeling success. We're modeling the attitude.
Yeah.
We're not going to be another Thomas Edison. So I had a coach one time told me, he said, because a lot of speakers start out wanting to be the next Tony Robbins, which is impossible, because he's an enigma, even among the top Hall of Fame speakers of the world, who I'm friends with many of them. And Tony Robbins is still, an enigma, just a force of nature. Right. And so he's as tall as a tree, and, he just has his personality, and he was at the right time in the right place, and his life unfolded in a magical way. And I had a coach said, quit trying to be Tony. We already have one of those. Be the best Tim Shurr that you can be. And I thought that was the best bits of advice. Of course, then I'm like, well, why would anybody want to be Tim Shurr? And then I had to learn how to change that, right, and upgrade those beliefs and change those. So now we've been talking about the mistakes. We've been talking about the biases. We've been talking about how we are the man or the woman sitting on top of an elephant, right? And so now let's pivot and take our power back and say, what are some ways that we can make smarter? Let's go with money. What are some ways we can make some smarter financial decisions?
And what's so great is making smarter financial decisions is incredibly easy, because it's not the market that kills people. It's not the up and downs. What it is us. You look at any 20-year rolling average of the S&P over the entire history of the market. There's never been a time when there hasn't been a positive return. But what gets us in trouble is when we do it ourselves and we try to take it on. So this is something that the brain scientists call something called illusory correlation bias. And what happens is we tend to get kind of full of our own stuff. The market will naturally go up or down. And what happens is on one day, let's say that a CEO is suddenly selling her shares, and we think, yeah, I'm going to sell my shares today too. And the market goes up. And suddenly our brain is hardwired to look for patterns. Because back on the African savannah, people that figured out patterns, your brain takes about 20% of your calories. So if I could find patterns, I could use less brain power and survive. Well, that worked really well because brains were so expensive to run that anything we could do that made shortcuts kept us from starving to death. We're not like that anymore. So what happens is she sells her shares, and then suddenly we think, I found something. This is great. I've got a pattern. Well, what we know is that the markets just undulate all the time. And maybe the reason the market went up that day or down that day had nothing to do with those shares being sold. Maybe an analyst missed his train that day. And lo and behold, that he did a bad report that day. You'll have no idea how to do that. So when you think about how investing works, most of us think that what we do is that we're putting money down on how profitable or unprofitable a company will be. But that's not exactly true. No question, that's a big force that's there. But what you're betting on actually is how other people feel a company will do on profit or loss. But it's not even that simple. You probably don't have the time to do all the analysis on that. So you have to rely on probably some sort of an advisor. So follow me here. What you're betting on is how an advisor feels about how people in the stock market will react to how profitable a company is going to be, right? But it's not even that simple. You probably don't have time or the money to talk to those big advisors. So what do? Maybe you tune in the financial news services. So what you're betting on is how a journalist feels about how an advisor feels about how investors feel about how the company will do. And you have zero chance of ever figuring that out.
Oh, that's awesome. That's brilliant.
So the only thing that you can do to consistently win is play the long game. Because if you look at the Dow over the history, it's gone up. And if you simply take your money, throw it in there and leave it alone, you're going to do fine. It's when we mess with it that we start losing money. Active investors have a 75% lower return than people that do the other way.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. It always seems to go back to being brilliant in the basics, the basics that you're learned. And then as soon as we try to make it fancier, as soon as we try to figure out how to outsmart the system, then, and become a day trader, right? Or go on a hunch that we have, or a roll of the dice, or watching what you're saying in your brain, making these connections when there aren't connections, right? Then all of a sudden things just, and especially if you get a little bit of success, then your brain is like, oh, well, we definitely have the pattern then. So I've found that sometimes the more successful clients I have are harder to coach because they already think they know it all. And so, because they've been rewarded for what they've done. A lot of leaders are the same way, even if they're not very good leaders, what they have done has worked for them, or made a multi-million-dollar company, and they're afraid of letting it go or upgrading because they don't want to lose their mojo, whatever mojo means. That's just a made up feeling that people give to thinking they figured out the recipe for success. So when we're working with someone like that, what do you do? How do you get them to understand and believe that they might be driven by these unconscious biases, and that they're on top of the elephant, they aren't the elephant?
Well, what we tell people, we tell them, hey, okay, I need you to trust your gut, is what we say.
Yeah.
And so what exactly is our gut? Well, our gut is nothing more than our instinctual brain, is what it's all about. And do you really want some guy that's a caveman making complicated financial decisions for you? I don't think you do. So there are times when you should trust your gut on those things that are very similar to what caveman felt today. So for example, love. There's probably not a lot of difference between falling in love with that cave lady a million years ago and falling in love now. Trusting your gut's a great idea there, because that gets down to how your instinctual brain really feels. With 85% of our decision-making process being instinctual, you want that love relationship to work on an instinctual level. And that's an important thing to do. The food you like, eating probably is pretty similar to what it was, back in caveman times. And you want to trust your gut that you won't like that steak, or maybe that chicken won't be what you need. But anything that requires any kind of advanced thinking, whether that's in business, whether it's in finance, anything that's analytical, you got to bring a red flag and a bullhorn to say, stop now. Because when I trust my gut, I'm going to be letting that instinctual brain run my life. And odds are it's going to make really bad decisions.
That's fascinating, Graeme. I love that distinction, right? So when it comes to Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Okay. So when it comes to trusting your gut, maybe with your relationships or, in a romantic way, maybe you trust your gut more. But when it comes to finances, you don't trust your gut. You got to look at the numbers and be more analytical. But how do you know when to trust your gut and when not to, if you're being so persuaded by unconscious programming or subconscious programming or limiting beliefs? So how do you know
what you've got to do?
Mm-hmm.
Couple of things you got to do. First of all, you got to get people and systems that will check you. So there's going to be times, particularly when we have a market dive or turn, you got to say, okay, I'm insane right now. I'm not going to make any decisions. I'm not going to rebalance right now. So what you got to do is you got to find the time to make those decisions when your elephant is napping, when your elephant isn't as powerful, and you're going to be calm and rational. So that's about making those decisions of what you'll do ahead of time. So in the money world, what I say is you've got to sit down and kind of go, okay, if the market drops 5%, here's what I'm going to do, and plan that out ahead of time. Or if this sector falls, here is what my strategy is going to be. And you write those out in a document. And then you swear on a big stack of Bibles that you say, I'm going to follow my plan, and I will not let my instinctual brain freak me out. And this is true for everything that we do. So many times in business, we end up being in the heat of the moment, and we make these emergency reactions that end up being things that are deeply instinctual. You want to think out what can go wrong ahead of time. When entrepreneurs start things, or when we start new projects, we have this tendency to just kind of go, well, as problems come up, I'll just deal with them. You're going to be insane then. And that's not the time that you want to deal with them. So it's about saying, what could go wrong with this before you even start? You want to make sure that you've laid out what those are. One of my favorite guys that did this was Eric Yuan. He's the guy that started Zoom. Now, I thought it was crazy amazing how Zoom scaled to like 10 times what they were doing with hardly missing a beat when the pandemic started. Well, why was that? Well, Eric Yuan schooled himself in failure. What he did, he went to all his competitors and he studied every time everything went crazy bad. And he runs his servers at about 50%, never lets them get above that, because he knows that the service has got to be reliable. And this is what you want to do with your life as well. What are the things that are going to go wrong? If you can think those out ahead of time and even just contemplate what you might do, you're going to be way better at being able to deal with it with your rational brain when crunch time comes around.
That's brilliant advice, Graeme. It's brilliant advice. And that's what they would do in, military or special forces. You've always got plan B, because they say you got plan A until boots hit the ground and bullets are flying over your head. And then it's plan B, and then they rely on their training, their instinctual training. So even if they have to adjust, they know what to do because they've run these, worst case scenarios over and over again. So I love this. It's not just studying success or what works. It's also studying failure and what doesn't work so that you don't end up there.
Yeah, it's Mike really Tyson, brilliant. Everybody's got a plan till they get hit in the mouth.
I love that. That's so true. Graeme, where can people find more, about you, and how can they bring you in to help their companies? Where's the best place to find you?
Well, Tim, let me tell you, I didn't get quite enough love as a child. And so what I have taken to doing is producing copious numbers of videos. I bang out about 3 of these suckers every single week. And boy, I just need some loving on them. So anybody that wants to learn more about this, I've got more than 100 videos on all the various cognitive biases that they are, survivorship bias and the sunk cost fallacy and all the different things. If you want to learn how to make smarter money decisions and how to recognize the signs that an impulsive decision might be likely, this is the place to go, because you're going to learn all about the weird, freaky things that your brain's going to do to try to betray you.
Oh, and it is a fact. So I became like an addict to your videos that you have. So go to youtube.com and then do a search on Graeme, Grame.
Actually, it's Graeme.
Yes, I know.
Yes, Newell, and then Newell. So it's Graeme, Graeme Newell. And you can find all my videos there. And I've got the same website address, graemenewell.com. There you'll find everything there as well. And And as you go by, I hope that you'll reach out to me because I love to talk about this stuff. So drop me a note, drop me an email. I'd love to talk to you about how you're doing business and ways that you're making cognitive biases not take over and really do smart business. Those are great conversations.
There you go. Graeme, thanks so much for being a mesmerizing guest. You are absolutely amazing, and I'm excited to learn more from you.
Thanks for having me. It was a great time.
All right, everybody, that is extraordinary, right? Oh my goodness. Graeme is amazing. He's got so much information, so many tools, such an extraordinary background in advertising. And then now in the brain research that he's done, it's just really extraordinary. And his videos are amazing. You can tell how polished they are. He's got the B-roll in them, and it's just fascinating. And every time I watch one of his videos, I'm like, this is amazing. You can find him on LinkedIn as well. So go subscribe, GraemeNewell.com, and consume his videos on YouTube and apply what you're learning, and it'll make your life mesmerizing. So thanks so much for being with us, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody. Hey, would you like more free tips on how to be a mesmerizing leader? Then check out mesmerizingleadership.com, and also hang out with me on Facebook, facebook.com/Tim Shurr. Thanks so much, and make your day a sure success. Hey, it's Tim Shurr. Would you like to learn my best secrets for how to be mesmerizing? Then head over to www.survivingtothriving.me. That's www.survivingtothriving.me. I'll see you there.